So here's a short overview of the trip that I took last weekend to get the boat up to Newport to have the new Raymarine Quantum Radar installed in preparation for my passage back down south again to Tasmania. The boat is moored up here in the Lane Cove River, so it's just a short trip out through the Lane Cove River into the Parramatta River, under the Sydney Harbour Bridge, past Bradley's Head, and the first night, which was a Friday night, I just stayed in the lee of the land at Watson's Bay there. It was blowing probably 25 to 30 knot nor'easter during the evening as well, so I had some good protection in there. 6 o'clock in the morning I got up and then moved the boat out to South Head and headed north, so I was probably at sea by close to 7 o'clock. Then the short passage, which really from heads to head with a good wind from North Head to Barrenjoey Headland, I can usually do in around 2.5 hours, but this took me nearly 3 hours, nearly 3.5 hours under motor to travel that short distance up to Barrenjoey, because it was all headwind into a nor'easter even early hours of the morning. This is the area here where I picked up the Dolphins, which you'll see later in the video clip. But once I got into Pittwater, I then headed south and just laid up for the day in Morning Bay here, which is a really beautiful little spot. You'll see that in the video as I show you the passage to Newport. And then the final destination was just a little marina down here in Newport, which is very, very tucked in out of the way, and very, very well, I suppose you have to be very careful navigating these waters down through here, because the channel is very, very narrow and very small. So that was the passage, and then the following weekend I did the return thing. I came out in the evening, I stayed at Morning Bay overnight, and then the next morning I headed out and did a similar return trip. The unfortunate part was, as you'll see in part B of the video clip, the weather was not predicted, even though the storms were predicted, but the weather was not predicted, in particular the wind. So have a look at part B and you'll get a bit of a view as to what it was like on my return trip. So this was the first part of my sea coastal passage north to Pittwater. There's a fair bit of roll on the boat as I contend with relatively strong early morning nor'east winds, blowing about 20 knots, with a 1.5 metre swell and 1 metre seas on top of that. So a bumpy ride for most of the morning with a mixture of both drizzle and rain. It's still a good experience at sea. Even though the weather was not that great, there were still some really enjoyable moments on the trip, as you'll see shortly. I would normally put up my main to help dampen the roll of the boat as I head to wind, but I was eager to reach my destination, or maybe I was just feeling a bit lazy that morning. As the morning starts to take shape though, the sunrise mixed in with the sky and the cloud formation really looks spectacular and very inviting. Very rocky and rolly out here still. Had this really amazing experience with these dolphins off the bow of the boat, probably just as we hit Long Reef, and they came out of nowhere. It was a fairly unpleasant trip at this particular point in time, but then they showed up, and as always they have a fantastic character and a very playful nature, and I just wanted to record them playing on the bow of the boat. And there'd be a number of times when I was sitting on the port side of the boat that one dolphin would actually look up, turn sideways and look up at me as they were just finessing the bow of the boat, always showing that they were faster and more elegant in the water than I was. But it was a beautiful sight of nature, and one that sort of made the passage truly enjoyable given the weather conditions that I'd had a little bit earlier on. So just watch and enjoy these beautiful mammals in the water. Just coming up to Bungan Headland now on my port beam, as I've just passed Bulgola Beach to the south of Bungan. Bungan Headland is always notorious for VHF radar. If you don't call Marine Rescue now, then from here to Barrenjoey Heads you may not get through due to the line of sight for transmissions on VHF radio. I'll have to wait now until I get inside Pittwater to make my call. Barrenjoey coming up now on my port beam. It's always a great sight to see, and it's always lovely entering Pittwater. I never tire of it. The lighthouse here is just so distinctive and such a welcoming sight, particularly on a night passage. Most of the morning, so not too cold though, it's probably about 24 degrees, but it's just been wet and drizzly and just winds moving from 25 to 15 knots. Seen a few whales, saw a big whale on the way into Barrenjoey here and some great pods of dolphins, so that would have made the trip really enjoyable, as it always does. Entering the shelter of Pittwater now and taking refuge from the northeast winds in the southern parts of Pittwater. Here I'm just passing Trahan Bay, and as you can see it's very sheltered and calm now. Then I'm going to head to one of my favourite little bays, which is the next bay around, which is called Morning Bay. And Morning Bay is a really great place to take refuge from anything coming from the north. I plan to lay up in Morning Bay until about 7 p.m. tonight, at which time I'll then pick up anchor and head down to the Newport Marina, as they're predicting a 30-knot southerly later in the evening. You can also see Scotland Island here off my port beam as I look south. So that's pretty much the end of the trip north. Now it's off to the marina to get the radar installed, and then part B will be the return trip back home again. So I hope you enjoyed that short passage north.